So thanks everyone for joining today's video group discussion. We are talking about building your business case for influencer marketing. So I'm very lucky to have three experts, people who we've kind of worked with here at Onalytica to kind of join this discussion. We're going to be talking through a little bit of everyone's background and trying to understand, what the key ingredients are to really making a convincing business case that your boss is going to agree to for influencer marketing. So to get everyone started, I'm going to just go around, ask everyone to give us their name, their job, and tell us kind of how they got into influencer marketing. So I'll go first. I am Jack. I am head of influencer strategy here at Onalytica. So been in the influencer game the last couple of years. Before that, I was kind of doing user-generated content, a little bit of kind of e-commerce and SEO stuff, and I really got into it just because I sort of found, adding those expert opinions to your marketing mix has proved such I think a valuable way of kind of driving results, validating the content that you're creating. So that's me. I'm going to, without any further ado, I'm going to pass to Kelvin. Do you want to go next?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelvin Lee. I work at Refinitiv. We are one of the world's largest financial markets data and infrastructure providers, serving some 40,000 customers in 190 countries. We are predominantly a B2B company, and my role there is the global social media director, and I'm part of the central digital team. I'm currently based in Singapore. Well, how I stepped into influencer marketing was a natural evolution of our social media strategy, where most firms, be it B2C or B2B, naturally starts off with organic content, right? And then they kind of pan out into paid ads on the different platforms. And as we matured into some of these channels, a natural tactic or area or approach, if you like, would be to explore the power and the influence of these earned reach via influencers. So we started working with Onalytica about 2 to 3 years ago to figure out with a small pilot what a use case might be in terms of a certain country, which we started with the UK. And happy to say now we have a global program, of which hopefully I'll touch on a little bit later.
Cool. Obviously, we didn't encourage Kelvin to drop that in, but that's really good to hear. Marie, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Marie. I'm the head of social media at Marie Curie. It's a charity based in the UK, and we care for people living with a terminal illness. So our business in social media is trying to get people to talk about death and dying, which is, it's quite a challenge. And, for us, ambassadors and influencers have kind of been key to what we do in the charity. So it's a natural extension, similar to how Kelvin said it, beyond kind of social media. It was kind of how can we harness influencers. So yeah, I've been working with Onalytica, I think, for about 3 or so years as well. So we've learned a lot over that period.
And last but not least, Chris.
Yes, hi, I'm Chris. I currently look after our research and analytics function at Ketchum London. Ketchum is a global communications agency working for clients across consumer, corporate, healthcare, you name it. How did I get into influencer marketing? Well, my background is in social media, so similar to both Marie and Kelvin. And I was thinking about this the other day. I think it was probably the back end of 2013, start of 2014, which is sort of 5-6 years ago, which is a lifetime in this career. I started being pulled into this thing called influencer marketing at the time. No one really knew what it was. It was described as the Wild West at the time. Everyone was sort of just doing their own thing. And I came into it from a B2C point of view because I was working at a B2C agency at the time, and did a lot of work with Coca-Cola actually, and particularly Fanta at the time, doing sort of the first influencer partnerships, which were primarily with YouTubers at the time, and really sort of evolved in from that. And now in the work that I'm doing at Ketchum, have a much broader, much more nuanced, much more structured approach to influencer marketing, and it continues to develop all the time.
Cool. So that is our panel. Thanks everyone. So Chris mentioned there, brought up the topic of YouTubers. So I thought I'd use that to kind of segue into our first kind of key question. Something we probably have to contend with a lot when we use the word influencer is that it conjures certain images. I wondered, maybe Kelvin, did you want to tell us about, like, what are some of the pushbacks you've seen when you kind of talk about maybe using influencers? Refinitiv obviously being a sort of, providing, things like sort of B2B risk solutions. Do you find people immediately think of a kind of really chipper 19-year-old in their bedroom making videos and they're confused? Is that the sort of pushback, or is it a bit more sophisticated than that now?
Well, just to clarify, Refinitiv is more than just a risk management company. We at the heart of what we do is data. But that aside, that's definitely one of the pushbacks we got, I would say 12 to 24 months ago, where the moment you mention influencers, the image of Instagrammers posing about food or their holidays are conjured up pretty much immediately. So there was definitely, in my environment, in the B2B space, internally, especially, the education that was much needed with even our own marketing teams to talk about the potential opportunities of working together with the individuals who inherently are thought leaders, experts, authentic opinion leaders on certain themes and topics that we at Refinitiv care about as well. In fact, today we don't play very much in the Instagram space. We are on Instagram, right? You can search Refinitiv on Instagram to follow us. We've featured a number of influencers there through some of these activations we've had at our events, webinars, etc. But it's not a huge play for us. Our play at the moment tends to be on LinkedIn, and that's where we see the greatest impact in terms of day-to-day, week-to-week engagement. The second platform is, of course, Twitter as well. We do share and engage with a lot of content around those specific areas. Another challenge which I faced was around getting the buy-in of the comms team, the PR team. With many PR teams, one of the key roles is to protect the reputation of a firm. Although we are currently a private company, but we inherently came from a culture where we were a listed company as part of Thomson Reuters. So who we engage with, what we post, though not as strict as a typical institutional bank, was carefully looked at as well. So getting the right decision makers internally really helped me to push that program forward this year.
Okay, cool. No, that kind of makes sense. It sounds, I guess, like a big thing is clarifying, where your audience is and who you're sort of trying to influence. You talked about really clarifying to people internally that you're going to go to LinkedIn, to where buyers are. So maybe that's fair. Marie, it'd be interesting to sort of know from your perspective, did you find, maybe the set of challenges you would have come across as different? Were people just concerned about giving ownership of your message to external people? Was that a big thing? Or do you think sort of there's a cultural factor in the charity sector with using ambassadors already? So maybe was it a bit easier, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a different challenge. Like, it was less about pushback to do it. People were really up for it. And in fact, probably our biggest challenge was these unrealistic expectations of us being able to do everything, and suddenly we're going to have this huge campaign, everyone everywhere getting involved, and just the take up would be huge. And so I guess people were just really enthusiastic, really up for it. Everyone, all of our directors really up for it, but it was that lack of understanding, I guess, of not really realizing what it takes to run a campaign and a strategy that will deliver long term. So I think that was really challenging for us, and particularly I think in the charity sector, where we are very lucky. People do love us and they want to support us, but it's a different thing to have an ongoing kind of partnership to get there. And I think obviously we don't pay either, so that's even harder. To ask people for their time and their commitment. So that's probably been our biggest challenge, is that education internally, but then also within influencers, it's just making, getting that commitment from them, I guess, without payment.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then Chris, for you, I know that you're obviously have a background in kind of data and analytics in a big way. Do you when you're kind of setting expectations as to what's going to be available in terms of KPIs and metrics, are there, do you try and frame it a particular way? Are you trying to how do you, I guess, go about setting expectations if you're making the business case to a client? Do you sort of lay out the KPIs you're expecting there and then, or is there a sort of earlier sell, do you think, on the concept of influencer marketing before you can build a detailed business case?
There's definitely an earlier sell. I think, back to the original comment about, what does the word influencer mean? I think as a relatively, it depends how you look at it. Some people call it a relatively new industry. In the PR industry, we think of the idea of, influencing the influencer as something we've been doing for a really long time, and it isn't new. It's just a new channel, I guess. But the sort of the lexicon is quite important. So, we at Ketchum, when we say influencer, we mean YouTubers, Instagrammers, the thing that comes to mind. And when we're talking about in a more B2B or corporate reputation environment, we use the terminology KOL, key opinion leader. But we have clients who use other things, whether it's COFs, key opinion formers, or KEs, key external experts, or SMEs, subject matter expert, and the list goes on. Like the lexicon is quite important to make sure that you're on the same stage and on the same page before you even begin, or you immediately have a disconnect. And I think before you get into what something can achieve, it's important that whoever you're talking to, whether in our case perhaps a CMO of a big organization or a PR client, understands where influencer marketing or what you want to do fits within the broader mix of their activity, their marketing activity, their marcoms. And to give some sort of concrete examples to that, it is quite a common barrier that we might come up against, is that influencer marketing is put as, okay, well, for this consumer brand, let's say, you're going to pay influencers to say something, let's say. So I immediately am going to compare that to my above the line spend, because it is paid. So you're then having a conversation about, well, is my TV ad or my online advertising or my ECRM more effective at getting the message to the right people than your influencer piece of activity? And it starts being compared to other things in the marcom mix, and that can be really a hurdle that you can't get over sometimes. And that can be the biggest battle, is making clear actually what it's going to do, what's going to deliver outside of the other activity that might be going on. And so you've got to immediately start thinking, well, if we're going to do something in the influencer space for whatever sort of vertical, whether it's B2B, B2C, whatever, what is the actual objective, and how is it different from what we might be doing in other places? And I find that the best way to do that, to start that discussion, is to come up with a new objective, a unique objective that it's going to do. So if you go in and say, this is going to help us reach X, well, I'm already doing that over here with my ECRM or with my paid social advertising on LinkedIn. You're going to have to frame it differently. You're going to have to say, it's actually going to drive much more resonance with that group than you can do in your other things. And that's what you need to build your business case around. So it's really important to have those initial conversations before you even get into how many people you're going to reach and how many leads you might generate, or etc. You've got to get the understanding as to where it fits in.
Okay, so you think probably number one on the checklist is that objective setting, kind of just what is the headline thing I'm trying to drive. I mean, Kelvin, would you say that sort of rings true for you? Is it just about setting kind of the overall marketing or comms objective you're trying to drive? Did you kind of are there other things maybe on your checklist that you'd say you would go through if you're trying to help someone in a different part of the business set up their own program? What else do you think is on the checklist?
Well, I would revert back to my experience of our recent program this year. We had 4 to 5 specific objectives. Some of them would be the usual ones. For example, in fact, if you have been following the birth of Refinitiv, if you like, we only stood up as a brand some 13 months ago. So we had that challenge of building brand awareness, and for us versus other brands or NGOs, associations, that was a priority from a management marketing point of view. So brand awareness would be one. And secondly, as a company, we have lots of content, data, thought leadership, stories to tell. And we wanted to genuinely build that relationship on an authenticity of us standing up as a new brand, really meaning why we do what we do. Inherently, one of the channels, if you like, was to figure out how do we build relevance, authenticity in the markets with these influences that we have. Thirdly, then drilling one level deeper down. It's not just about the brand, but also about key themes, key areas of discussions that we care about. As a firm, we have data technology and tools to help our clients to fight financial crime broadly as a theme, and fight financial crime is one of our key conversational platforms on social media, for example. So we wanted to associate the right themes with the right kind of thought leaders or KOLs, if you like. Number 4 is then diving down even deeper, was around how do we increase the share of voice of these topics versus our competitors, who inherently tend to also overlap in terms of the data they provide, the solutions that they provide to our prospects, clients, and customers as well. And then I would say the last one was really more of a business metric. We were keen to better understand how we can drive incremental traffic to our blogs, to our website, to our landing pages, and ultimately, so hopefully through their networks, through their traffic, through the association of the blend of authenticity and the content and the topics we care about, and genuinely we have a passion in helping our clients to solve, build that bridge between their network, their followers, and potentially how Refinitiv can help.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm kind of interested on the topic of kind of authenticity. I'm guessing for you guys, Marie, that's obviously a really important connection that you sort of need to make with people. They have to, and as you say, you're kind of lucky to have a brand that's, an organization that's very well loved. But did you find it was hard, knowing that building an authentic connection might take longer and be harder? Did that mean people needed more convincing, or do you think people in the sector inherently got that?
I think this is one of the best kind of learnings that we've had over doing this work, which is that we were traditionally finding a good idea, maybe one of our particular campaigns that we thought would really appeal to influencers, say Tea Party, or like our fundraising offering where we ask people to bake cakes. Well, naturally we can find kind of bakers that would be interested in supporting this campaign. And so we'd very much focus on the objectives of that one campaign, and often we'd be able to get resource or we'd get support for that one campaign. But essentially, after doing that, which was really resource intensive because we were trying to find new people each time, building new relationships from scratch, having to create an event around that what was happening was that we were creating these relationships, but it was just based solely on that one idea, and we were losing them after that. And so I think what's important is, yes, focus on objective, but I would focus on knowing kind of that you need this long-term relationship with influencers to think about also what your long-term objectives are. So you need to, so that you can, with each campaign, you're building up a group of influencers that you'll be able to keep, and there'll be ones that you can relate a lot of your products to, and that you've got a more authentic relationship with. And I think for us it was even more important because we don't have a lot of resource. So now, you know, we'd rather approach 5 people for an influencer campaign that we would kind of build a relationship with on a sustained basis. And I think that's basically what we've done now. It's a digital ambassador program, and with each person that we meet them face to face, and we talk to them about our cause and hear about what their passion is and why they're getting involved, and then we just talk about our campaigns that we've got on an ongoing basis. And it's just a longer term view on it, so it kind of works for us in terms of having a small team to focus on a couple rather than lots. But also I think that's what influencers want as well. They want that long-term genuine like passion for a product or a brand that they can kind of keep talking about, and that their followers will get used to and can see it's genuine. No,
I think that makes a lot of sense. It's kind of, you know, that's an evolution of the industry that we're kind of seeing more talk now about, almost, you know, the industry going back to authenticity in a big way, and sort of rediscovering that core, and as a reason it got started. Chris, I wanted to come to you to because I know obviously as a sort of with your experience agency side, you probably see lots of different industries all trying to kind of implement influencer programs or sort of, you know, key opinion leader programs. Are there industries you think are kind of missing an opportunity right now, and kind of how, maybe as a follow-up to that, how would you maybe convince them, you know, what are the ingredients for business cases in industries that are lagging behind but have a big opportunity to get involved in this?
I think there's an element of particular sectors that have more embraced this world, particularly sectors that perhaps are a bit more nimble, a bit more agile, have lots of startups, for example, small sized businesses with, you know, very grandiose goals, who are willing to sort of try anything. A lot of them have led the field in terms of things like professional and financial services. But I think probably where the opportunity is over the next couple of years is actually, we touched upon it where we talked about how Mary Curie is a respected and loved brand or organization that has a lot of credibility that's been built up over many years. But there are lots of organizations out there who perhaps worry about how they're perceived, who have perhaps, you know, advocates but also detractors, and that can often, you know, put off those organizations from sort of going out there. It's easier just to sort of sit within the safety of your own world rather than going outside and engaging with others and trying to build those relationships. Yet you could argue that the benefits for them doing that are even stronger than an organization that is sort of having a head start from a credibility or, you know, brand love point of view. And I think it's starting to reach the point where those organizations are realizing that they at least have to pay attention to the conversations that are being had in this space, and probably need to start thinking about an engagement strategy as well, picking and choosing where they play, of course. But that, I think, is where there's still a hell of a lot of opportunity for lots and lots of organizations, regardless of sector.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So to kind of I guess to finish off here, I wanted to do a little bit of future gazing. You know, here at Onalytica, I think we're seeing more interest in influencer marketing overall. You know, the sort of Google Trends research shows people are still definitely looking into it. We can still see lots of interest. I wonder if any of you feel, you know, does anyone here feel like it's easier to convince people, or like, you know, you kind of get fewer questions now when you talk about an influencer driven strategy? And I maybe kind of wanted to get one prediction from each of you on what you think, you know, in future we might start including in our business case for influencers. You know, we've touched on a few possible options around kind of authenticity or more sector specific stuff, but maybe Marie, did you want to go first and sort of, so yeah, firstly, do you feel like it's getting easier to convince people, and what do you think the business case of the future might include? Yeah,
internally, yeah, totally. But I think it's not too late, but like it's, you know, it's the fact that it's common knowledge now means that it's going to be even harder to kind of reach influencers, because they're getting even more asks than what they had previously. So I think internally, yeah, it's actually just never massively been an issue for us. I think we're just got to, I think what's got to change is there's got to be more resource internally to support it. So I think internally, yeah, it's easier. People know what it is, so that's helpful. And what was your other question about business case?
Yeah, kind of what do you think it's going to look like in the future? Do you think maybe it'll just be that you're going to start asking for more support from the organization? Sort of, we're not dipping our toe in the water.
Yeah,
anymore.
I think there'll just be more people dedicated to it. And I think that probably doesn't even just sit with social media. It might be wider than that, just to understand that actually, like, brand marketing and brand advertising, certainly on social media, is just like really limited, and people are just desperate to hear from experts and from individual people. So I think we just need more time and people dedicated to it. So hopefully that's what we'll see.
Chris, do you agree with that? Do you think it's kind of, we're going to start asking for more resource from organizations to be put into it? Are you expecting 2020 to be easier to convince people, about the same?
I think it really is a lumpy and uneven picture, and I think one of the biggest potential drivers for growth, and where there will be opportunity, is where engaging with influencers, listening to influencers, actively listening to that space teaches you something you don't know. I think where a lot of opportunity is lay in the sort of B2B and more sort of issue space has been, you know, for example, a company that's not really thought about, say, sustainability before, but now they have to, but they appreciate that they don't really understand the space. That is ripe for, well, let's go and talk to some influencers, experts, whatever, and maybe co-create content with them, or get that, you know, bring them inside and help us develop that. And that's been a fueling of growth. But where I think it's going is the communications landscape and what people think is changing faster and faster and faster and faster. And organizations are starting to realize that things they think they know, they're wrong about. And I think that's where there's an opportunity to get, but the next sort of growth area for influencer relations in those spaces is, which is where you can go, well, you think this is what is going on, but actually this is what's going on, and this is where the conversation's going, and this is where you need to be, or in 2 years' time you're going to be completely out of the loop, and you're going to be seen as, you know, old-fashioned, or, you know, the wrong side of the debate or the issue. So I think that's sort of what I expect to see. I think from a resource perspective, that is just going up exponentially, and has been for a number of years, I think. And I think it probably is reaching the tipping point where any company who's doing quite a lot of marketing, where marketing is valued within that brand or company, is considering influencer relations in some form or other, because it's started to establish itself as a clear choice in that Markham's mix.
Okay, well, that's interesting. And finally, Kelvin, are you finding the sort of the conversations easier? Are they, you know, do you think your business case is evolving to kind of, I guess, be more forceful about the value influencers can bring, some of those sort of outside in perspectives that the other two are talking about? Or are you sort of still finding there's a lot of education to do?
I would say it's easier to talk about, but really difficult to roll out.
Yeah.
Because no matter how many, a lot of this, and Chris, when you consult with agencies and getting this sold in, whoever you're speaking to needs to sell within the organization and as well. So I'm that person, right? So I've learned over time that you really need to get a band of stakeholders around you to be able to help represent the different departments in content, PR, digital, events, regional activation, creative, comms. And I've learned about this the hard way, where you think you covered the right bases. Actually, you just need somebody from legal or compliance to say, no, this is not going out, and that's completely derailed it. So I would say, on record, whoever is on this in this video and thinking about influencer marketing, you're a trailblazer, because it requires a renaissance style of thinking about building these relationships and being genuine about it. And actually, if you have to step up and meet these people, you have to, but also being able to demonstrate the data and the metrics to management that this investment works. Because ultimately, in a year's time, they're going to ask, so what's the ROI? So to answer your point directly, it's easier to talk about, but really difficult to implement, which leads me to, I guess, two predictions. One is in B2B, or maybe 2 to 3, definitely I will see more B2B firms, at least in my space, experimenting with influencer marketing, monitoring in some way, shape, or form. Secondly is, as we get that more of that proliferation, we should see, to Marie, I think you mentioned briefly that this will become more commonplace. Maybe it moves away from the role of social media managing this to more of a day-to-day comms or PR role, where today most PR teams think about managing the relationships with the typical journalist, analyst, on press, online or offline. I'm starting to get that sense already. The third one is, we talk about that a lot at various events and conferences. It's in the future we do need to move away from the vanity metrics of reach and likes and clicks, good stuff, but ultimately we're pressured to talk about how this program has delivered true business ROI. It might be incremental traffic to the site and being able to demonstrate that, or it might be additional leads, or it might be really involving them at some of your own proprietary events or webinars. So hopefully that makes sense. A couple of food for thought from my end.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, thanks very much, everyone. I thought that was really insightful. I think, Kelvin, and lots of kind of checklists there, thinking about, who the stakeholders are and making sure that your ask from the business is calibrated. I thought, we kind of touched on a similar point with Marie, and also looking at, what is the actual value of that long-term investment in an authentic partnership. And you're actually, the way that the overall ROI is going to be much higher if you just invest a little harder in creating those kind of long-term bonds, the time, bringing people to meet. And I thought, Chris talking about how bringing that insight from sort of different sectors and really being able to see there's this kind of, there is actually a holistic picture across all of them. I thought, that the biggest thing here for me overall, my sort of insight from this conversation is it is really important to calibrate your ask from the business clearly, because you are going to need to increasingly, to run a program like this, you're going to need to bring in other people. And the category of influencer is often people who sort of fall between analyst relations or press relations or whatever it is. So there's lots of different organizations, parts of the organization you're going to need to bring in. But hopefully that's been useful to all the people at home. Thanks very much to my 3 panelists, Kelvin, Marie, and Chris, for joining. On our next one of these, it's going to be Alistair hosting, and he is going to be talking about why we need to stop talking about macro, micro, and nano influencers, and kind of come up with a new set of terms. So hopefully tune in for that discussion as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you.